now. How you doing? Dave Fennoy here. Another Wednesday, another Ask Dave Fennoy Anything. So glad you could be here. And just a couple of things to talk about. Connection Open. I have been using Connection Open. It has saved my butt a couple of times when Source Connect, and I don't know if you were on Facebook today, but is your Source Connect down? My Source Connect is down. Give it a try. I've also been using it a little bit, working with students of mine, doing demos, and it is clean as a whistle. And I think at some point, Connection Open is going to be much more of a player than we're seeing it as a player now. I want to remind you, next Wednesday, Miss Celia Siegel will be my guest, and she'll be talking about branding and promoting your voiceover business. We are all little voiceover entrepreneurs now, and it's about time for me to bring my guest on. And let's just hit that. Well, where are you now? Did you go away? Oops. Oh. You know what? I messed up. I hit the wrong thing for some reason. Just click back in. While Mary Lynn Wissner is clicking back in, and there she is, and there you are. And for some reason, guest is in green room. How can I?
Let's see.
There we go.
I'm not going to touch
Oh,
anything.
okay. There we go. Now I got you.
Okay, yay. That was weird. I was sort of like diffused.
And you know what? Operator error. Operator error. There's a lot of buttons here. You know, when you're usually on television, there's a control room. Well,
Yeah.
I'm the cameraman. I'm I'm doing all the graphics. I'm it's all on me. So
It's just like in our voiceover booths now. We're doing everything.
isn't
So,
that the truth? And you know, when we started back in the day, and I talked to a lot of my students about this, all I had to do was show up at my agents to do an audition. And if I booked the job, I went to somebody's studio, did the job, and that was it. But anyway, let's get a proper introduction here. Mary Lynn Wissner, uh, you look like you're 22.
I
You've been in the business longer than that. You were in town either casting or being an agent in 1990 when I got here.
1990 is when I started my voiceover company,
Oh,
casting office,
okay.
Voices Voice Casting. But I started in the business in '88 and working for Don Pitts right out of college, working in uh, uh, casting.
Yeah, and for
Working
some
with Don Pitts and the agent, and then casting at Voicecaster, and then voices. Sorry, I'm getting
for
old.
some of these young whippersnappers that have no idea who Don Pitts was,
Yeah,
um, how would you describe him?
I always like to call Don the godfather of voiceover agenting, because before him, there really wasn't. He kind of started the whole business of being voiceover agents, because back in the day, in the late '70s, early '80s, actors that did voiceovers, that did cartoons, and there were not network announcers, but they didn't have a voiceover agent. They would just go; these things would go through their theatrical agents. And Don was a radio guy, and then started to represent, people like June Foray and Orson Welles and Dawes Butler and Frank Welker, and like Walker Edmonston, a lot of those old cartoon guys and gals, and then came along like Steve Fisherman and Herb Tannen, and that whole group, and then agencies started, besides his agency,
Yeah,
then then they just all expanded and grew. So for me, coming out of college, and I was an on-camera actress. I did a lot of, I paid through for college doing on-camera commercials. I grew up here in LA. My dad was a TV producer, and so I grew up around the business. And I loved acting. It was fun, and I paid for college, and did commercials. But I knew nothing about voiceover. And when I graduated college, I had to get a job, and my degree was in broadcast journalism, and I loved radio, but I couldn't get a job. And so I saw his ad looking for an assistant, and that's how I got that job working for him. And he was great because he would just throw you into the booth and say, "Okay, yeah, go direct Orson Welles, no big deal," or go,
Oh,
we're doing this.
wait a minute. You can't just keep going after go direct Orson Welles. Did you get to direct Orson Welles?
Sure did. I did.
And what was that experience like? Before the broadcast, we were talking about Ernie Anderson, another legend in the business, who was notoriously difficult to work with.
Yeah.
But a lot of us have heard the Orson Welles story. So, what's your
Well,
Orson Welles
you know
story?
what? I never experienced that with Orson, and he died shortly after I had gotten there. But I do remember a couple of instances. One, talking to him on the phone and just being like, "Oh my God," you know, because I'm a huge like movie fan. I love old movies, so that it's like as soon as I hung up, I called my mom and dad. You won't believe who I just spoke with. And then I remember one time him coming into the office there, and this was at Commercials Unlimited, where we had a voiceover booth, and it was Don had the voiceover studio. And I'm not joking, the booth was literally about 4 feet wide by about 6 feet long. It was very narrow. And Orson he was a very large man. I remember like thinking, oh, I'm so, I didn't want to make him uncomfortable or embarrassed. And he just sort of walked in sideways and did his thing. And I basically was more like a button pusher. I'm like, okay, Mr. Wells, this is for this. And what they want to hear is this. And you push, this was 1/4 inch tape, and you push the buttons. And I remember standing there going, oh my God, like pinching myself. And I remember like we did a couple takes, and I think he asked my opinion, but he was very nice, he was very kind. He wasn't rude to me or anything. And then he left, and he had a cane, I remember, and I remember he had a driver or somebody like a helper person with him. And like I said, he passed away shortly thereafter. Oh, and I do remember we went to Don took me to a party at his house. It was like a Christmas party at his house. And he wasn't like, it was at his house, but I never saw him.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that was my Orson experience. So it's funny, and we were talking about Ernie. Ernie was always very nice to me. Some of the people that you thought would have been the super, super nice ones, because they were super nice on television or in the movies, were not always as kind to, this little assistant that I was at the time. But I think because I grew up in the industry and I was on sets a lot, not only from my dad working in television, but then me doing commercials, I was very comfortable around it. So I wasn't as starstruck or, distracted by a lot of that stuff. And I think I'm a good director, and I just was discovering that then at the time.
Yeah, I gotta bring a comment on here. Joe Cipriano is checking us out.
Oh, Joe. Hi,
Joe,
Joe.
Orson Welles, you people are such pests. What is it in the
Yep.
depths is what I think he meant. Depths of your ignorance that you want. LOL. And that, I believe, is a direct quote from a voiceover session that he was in. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, it was. It was. That's a famous, and you guys could find it on YouTube. It's out there.
Oh yeah. And Ernie Anderson, you could go back and hear outtakes of him cussing out producers and writers. And the business is so different now, not just because most of the people in voiceover now don't have that kind of personality. I feel like I have a pretty large personality, but that it's not that particular style of large. Beyond that, what do you see different in this business from when you started
Oh God, what
until
is it?
now?
You know what? That's such a great question because it's so layered. What's different, and I don't mean this to sound like bitter or sad or anything like that. There's not the sort of specialness or uniqueness that voiceover was back then that it is now. And that's not saying that what's going on now is not great. It's fabulous. It's great. I love it. It's just that we sort of felt like we had a secret back then,
Yeah.
and it was like, and you remember, people, when you would mention voiceover to certain actors, they'd be like, voiceover, huh? There's no money there. It's like, if you only knew,
If you only
you
knew.
know? Yeah. And it was like this little secret in the industry. And once actors started to kind of get hip to that, we would always make jokes like, okay, well, pretty soon we're going to see him dump his on-camera career and switch over to voiceover, and that's what would happen. And it was so wonderful to work with talent and develop careers, and help them get a campaign and have coach them or whatever. And I sort of miss a little bit of that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I miss a little bit of that specificity that it was. And it's still, I think it's, you still need, like, I still believe the cream rises to the top. I mean, there's a million people that want to do it. Not everybody can, but there was something sort of, I always say it was like the halcyon days of the industry. It really was special. We didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
We were doing this cool thing, and you cast a commercial and there it is on the radio or TV,
And that's what nostalgia is. The 20 years before that, they would have said, "Oh man, it was so great back then." But we always look back at that age when we were beginning whatever it was and just getting going, and the only constant is change.
Yeah.
And I remember so many of those guys when I came to town in 1990, who were the big voices at the networks, and I remember as beepers came in and cell phones came in and email came in, and guys that hadn't had to deal with that, really thinking that the industry could not do without them.
Right. And nobody studios.
Yeah, and no one, and so many of them weren't really willing to learn the new stuff, to get the cell phone, to oh gee, I got to set up a studio in my house. And maybe maybe that was their way of retiring. I don't know. But the one thing I do know about now is things are changing constantly.
All the time. You're right.
Now in that, you cast so many projects. What are some of the kinds of things you might have cast that people would have no idea about? Or I think they probably think of you as casting commercials, yes. But what else have you cast?
It seems to me that we mostly end up doing commercials. It just because commercials are the bread and butter of our industry, so they're cast more frequently. But I have cast a lot of stuff for History Channel. We do narrations, like corporate narrations. Are you still there, Allison? I lost you.
Oh yeah, no, I'm up in the corner.
Okay, there you go. And I have worked on a few animation series and films. I've cast ADR groups for films, which is kind of fun because we've had to do voice matching. Pretty much anything anybody's ever needed a voice for, whether it be an IVR system or an audiobook. In these last 30 years that I've had voice casting, we've cast a voice for something in there, from talking cars to, the voice of God, not the real voice of God, but I can pretty much, if you name a medium, I know we've cast a voice for it.
Okay, so whatever it is, cartoons, animated films, commercials. Yep. How about promos, TV promos?
We have cast a few, but probably that's the least amount of that's the least genre or whatever that we've cast, and that was a long time ago. This was back when Lifetime was kind of first getting going. I want to say it was like sort of the second iteration of it, because it was sort of first starting as this woman's thing, and then it got a little bit bigger, and then they were deciding whether to do a man or a male or female voice, and so they came to some casting directors rather than doing it through the network. And so we did that. Hallmark Channel, I remember doing some promo stuff for them. And probably about, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, something for Sundance Channel. We did a few things for like CBS radio, promos for radio, but not, for the
Yeah.
television network.
Um, you haven't happened to have kept count of how many projects you have cast, have you?
It's funny you said that. There was a time I did. Um, and it was at that time, which would have been, because this is when we were redoing our site. So the person who was helping me asked me that. And it was in the, I want to say it was like 45,000 ish around there. And
Woo.
that was at the 25-year mark or so,
Wow. Wow.
something like that. But that's just the spots. That's not counting the amount of actors in each spot, because I
Well,
remember saying to her that I go, but then there's thousands and thousands of actors I've cast in those spots.
yeah. I've got a question that Walter Williams, I'm going to get to you and that question. It's a great question. But let me ask you, what have you learned from casting so many projects?
I I'm good at it. I learned that the culture and what's going on in our world, um, politically as well as economically, definitely dictates what is being asked for in voiceover. Um, I learned that I'm a good director, which I love doing, and I absolutely still get very giddy when I get an email or a phone call. Hey, Mary Lynn, we want you to cast something. I'm like, yes. I still love what I do. It's still super exciting for me. It's changed dramatically, of course, but I still really, really love it. And I've also learned that talent doesn't change. I mean, yes, the trends change and sounds change, but actors don't really change. There's
What
still,
do you mean by that exactly?
well, there's, if somebody is dedicated to their craft, they're dedicated to their craft, whether they're an on-camera actor or a voice actor, or a ballerina, and I love seeing that. I really love seeing passion. And I'm just a huge geek when it comes to acting and theater and musical theater and voiceover and animation, everything. So I embrace people that think like I do, and I love that. So that has never changed. The styles might change, and like I said, the sounds might change, and the trends in the sounds, the sounds of the voice and so on might change. But it's so exciting when you get an actor that accepts that, oh my God, it's hard work and I'm going to do it, and help me and teach me and, tell me what I need to learn and who to talk to, all that. I really love seeing that spark and then seeing that kind of come to fruition.
Well, something you said, I have the same thing. I am as excited now when I book a job as the first job I booked when I came to Los Angeles. And I have that sense that the people who really are successful, it's not just that they're talented, but there's a decent work ethic, and there's that love of it. Ooh, I am so enjoying this, that we put ourselves in it. And I would even suggest, if you don't really love this, you probably should be doing something else.
I have said that to people because the one thing about voiceover, and you probably have heard this, Dave, is that the voice is so telling, and it could be just because it's what my expertise is in, and I can hear things, but, I can tell when somebody's having a bad day. I can tell when they just don't get it. I can hear when, they're about to lose it, whatever. And, obviously you can hear when somebody doesn't have talent. And what we've seen a lot of recently, well, maybe in the last, I don't know, 7 years or so, is because of the accessibility of uh,
The internet.
computers
Yeah.
being digital. Everybody thinks they can do it. So there has been a bit of a change in the, I guess, the discipline of the art. I still say, yeah, you can buy your plug-in microphone and you can do all that, but if you don't have talent, none of that matters. You can go spend $12,000 on a booth, But if you don't have talent, it doesn't matter. You just wasted $12,000. And
I watched. I was at a convention in Atlanta a few years ago, and there was a gentleman. He had just retired and decided he wanted to do voiceover. And I was going to tell him about some reasonable equipment to buy, and he said, "Oh no, no, I've got that. I've got the U87. I've got the booth. I've got." And this guy had spent like almost $20,000 in equipment, and I kept
yeah,
thinking, wow, I hope this works out for you, or it's
yeah.
going to be very, very disappointing.
I've come
Um,
across quite a few of those, and it's just, they'll learn. They'll learn. There's nothing you can do about it.
I'm going to pull up this question from Walter Williams. Question from Mary. This season pro in VO sees trends in VO change constantly. What do you see as the next big thing in VO, and what's trending now stateside?
Oh, stateside. Well, we're still very heavily into the real person read. Real, natural, conversational, relatable, approachable, off the cuff. And I don't think that's going to go out of style because I think, as I was saying earlier, with the new administration, um, I notice every time we get a new administration in the White House, the trends change a little bit. And considering, Biden is such an easygoing, Scranton boy and just very, you know, man of the people kind of thing, he's relatable. And I think we're going to see advertising shift even more into that. So more
So,
in.
so what was the trend you saw under the last 4 years?
It's funny. As I was saying that, I knew you were going to ask me that. Um,
So a lot of
they,
commercials where they were lying to you.
what's funny? Excuse me. When he started, I remember, and you can ask other casting peoples because I remember there were all of a sudden we got a lot of casting calls that said authoritative, old school authoritative, and I was like, what? Oh my god, I'm so excited! I can call these guys back that I haven't seen in 5 or 6 years or whatever. Um, and so it's funny. I did see a lot of that, but then I think because people were wanting to lighten the I'm trying to be
They
diplomatic.
got plenty of it just from the White House.
Right. So then they were trying to go, okay, let's go the complete 180 and do that millennial read, which was just, very boring and off the cuff and distracted, whatever. Um, and now, and I haven't quite seen the millennial thing for about a year and a half or so as much. Of course, we've got the COVID read going now. Although I have to say that's been
In
kind
this
of,
very special time
yeah,
when we're
we're all in.
all pulling together. One of the things I've noticed is deeper voices or voices with authority but a warmth are being asked for. One of the things I love the most about what I'm seeing in scripts now is male or female.
I'll be honest with you. That's a very politically correct thing to do because mostly they just go for the guy. I see that
But
a
at
lot,
least
and
they're trying.
I know, but it's frustrating for me as a casting director
Yeah.
because I know that they're going to go pick a guy, but I always make sure I'm getting the girls in there too. You
Yeah, well,
know,
and what's amazing, I hear so many wonderful female reads
yeah,
that, and I'm just a little disappointed because I can't say from my television watching and radio that I have a really full, complete view of who's getting hired. But I notice uh, more women voices now than I have heard before, and in a wider variety of colors, shall we say?
totally agree. I totally agree, and I love it. You're hearing, I think, more women on car ads than men right now.
Yeah.
You're hearing more women doing some promos. And I've even heard, how to, it was one of like the American, it wasn't Bud Light. I think it was Michelob, whatever, where they have a Michelob brand that's like in a bottle or something. I don't know if it's like their more upscale Michelob or
Clearly, you're
something.
not drinking enough beer.
Yeah. But anyway, I heard a girl on that and I was like, yeah, that's cool. That's great. So, It's good. It's opening up more, and I'm definitely hearing more diversity, which is really good. I mean, this is America. That's what it's all about, and it
Yeah,
should be that way, you
yeah,
know?
I agree. Now, so let's go back and talk about that casual read, that millennial read. You do a lot of coaching, and when somebody comes to you, and I get a lot of people who maybe have come out of radio or they were the big announcers and now they want to get rid of that thing.
Right.
Um, what do you tell them to get rid of that? I tell them, well, look, I don't want you to not be able to do that. I still make some money doing that from time to time. I just want you to be able to do something else. How do you get people? How do you get through our thick noggins to help us with that?
That's pretty tough. And without giving away like my coaching secrets, there's a couple of things because I get a lot of those guys and gals, the ones that come from radio or that are born with that
That
announcer voice.
voice, yeah.
Nothing else you can. Now, you're an exception because you have this amazing voice. You're one of the few guys I know that can go full on announcer, but then can go badass, video game star. And not many guys that can do promos and announcer stuff like you can transition to that. So you obviously very clearly have really good acting genes too. It really all comes down to acting. They could have the greatest, most announcery voice in the world. They were totally successful on radio, but if they can't act and they can't make that copy sound like dialogue, even if it's written announcery, and that is hard to do. I totally acknowledge that. They're never going to work. So what I usually try to do is I give them I just call them actor hacks, things like adding layers and levels where not every sentence is the same, beginning, middle, and end. We break up the sentence a little bit or use your own phrasing, put in your own punctuation because you're not going to get rid of your voice. That's your voice
You know,
script.
I actually don't believe it's the voice that's the problem with most of
No,
us
it's
who
the
have
act.
a deep, rich, mellifluous voice. I also say that the more beautiful your voice, the faster bad acting shows up. Um,
That's exactly the
and
point. Yeah.
and so often it's because you've been told that you have this wonderful voice, should be doing voiceover, or you've been having a career where that is what has served you, and learning to let go of clearly full enunciated words and the song that you learn to do
Yeah.
is difficult. And some of the things you just pointed out um, are things I try to point out. One, forget about the words.
Hmm.
What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? Um, you've got a sentence that's 4 or 5 clauses long for this to this to this in a commercial. Make some of those something new. It's a surprise. You didn't know you were going to say it. Um, and just be a little more quiet.
Right. Right. I think that's a good one. You know what I also do, especially for talent that are out here in LA and maybe those in New York, because a lot of smaller cities don't have this. But I always make a lot of my voiceover talent, especially if they're not coming from an acting background, I make them go take an on-camera commercial acting class because the acting that you learn for on-camera commercials is the exact same acting you want to bring into the voiceover booth, except, oops, we forgot to turn the camera on. And what on-camera commercials teach you is how to, we could say the exact same lines that are in a voiceover script as though it's in an on-camera commercial, but we're learning how to, talk with a product, and we're learning how to engage with the other people in the scene and the environment all in a 30-second time frame, and we're still selling something just like we were in voiceover. But because it's on camera, you can't just stand there, with your arms by your side like you do in voiceover. You have to move, you have to
Well, and
pantomime it
actually, you
out.
can't even stand there with your arms at your side in voiceover anymore.
No, and that's why I say learn how to act in
Yeah.
on-camera commercials. It's like a mini version of it, but it's the same acting. So it's been a real revelation for a lot of actors to go and do that. my ex-husband is an on-camera commercial casting director. So, this was sort of revealed to me, many years ago. And like I told you earlier, when I was a teenager and in college, I did on-camera commercials. I mean, that's how I paid for college. So I understand that kind of acting and how it completely, beautifully transitions into the voiceover booth. So I highly recommend that. And of course, improv is great. And just basic acting classes, but you'll learn a lot from an on-camera acting class, commercial acting class.
And you know what? I'm gonna suggest a reason why. Yeah, bring me in. So same size now. Uh, I'm going to suggest, I think that's a great idea. Uh, and I'm going to suggest it's because you have more things to think about than the words on the page.
Yeah.
One of the things I try to teach my actors is um, don't worry so much about the words on the page. Let's find out who you are first. Let's find
Hmm.
out what you're talking about first, how you feel about it, what's your worldview. Let's get that together and ad lib in that voice. Now we can bring on the words. But why did you just say that? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you doing? Um, I find so often that if we're trying to play a real person, put ourselves in a real person situation. You're
Right.
standing in the kitchen making something to eat, or pouring a glass of milk, or watching TV. That you're a little distracted. One of these things you said about the millennial read, that little distracted thing where you're not really paying attention to everything, and you're just uh, all those other things to distract you
Yes.
from paying so much attention to enunciating these words.
Right. And what a lot of people do, and especially again, and I'm not picking on the radio people, but this is what they were
It's
successful
all
at, and
right. We've got big voices. We can take it.
this is what they're used to. Is I always say it's kind of like the lure of the microphone. I mean, I get it. There's nothing like you walk into that booth, and it's just, for all of us, it's home. It's like cozy and dark, and there's that gorgeous microphone, and we instantly all become Gary Owens, and we want to put on our voice. And I say to the actor all the time, I go, how come when you and I were talking, you had this totally different voice, and then you got into the booth and you're doing your pretty voice. I always say, stop being so cute, or don't put on your pretty voice. And the other thing too is physical actions, raising your eyebrows, or flipping your hair, or rolling your eyes, hunching your shoulders. All those very subtle physical actions cause very subtle inflections and intonations in our voice, which makes us sound more real. So that's the other thing I tell them to do. Move around, move your arms, like go, oh my God, or
I,
whatever people
I,
do.
I just look. Your body informs your voice.
Totally.
And,
Thank you.
and
Yeah, that's
it's the simplest thing. I'll say, well, what would your body be doing if you were talking on the phone? And if you're older, you go like this. But nowadays, you might be
yeah.
because you
I'm
you know
like,
got the earpiece in there. Uh, I've got a little question here. Love that, Craig Young. Have you
great.
ever heard a voice that sucked and they came your way again and they improved drastically? And there's a couple layers to this. Uh, I'm gonna assume he means sucked. Maybe he's talking about their talent, or maybe he's talking about the quality of their voice.
Right.
And I don't think it matters what your voice sounds like.
Yeah, that there is kind of a twofold thing with that question, Craig, because if your voice sucks, and it sucks is such a subjective term. um but yes, I'll be honest, I have heard people that have had really bad voices for voiceover. I'm not saying they have bad voices for any other career, but for voiceover, maybe they don't enunciate, maybe they have speech impediments, maybe they talk too quietly, maybe because they don't have any acting ability, they're boring or whatever. Yes, I have heard that. Um, but I think what he's trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're trying to say is, did they start off really um, not as talented and just completely green, and then when I heard them again a couple of years later or something, they were amazing? Yes, I have. And I can usually tell there is a nugget there. Like when you first hear somebody and yeah, you need a lot of work, you need some training. I just recently worked with a young woman. She was going to get a demo done with Eric Romanowski, and he was really great. He said, "You have a great voice, but you need to train. Don't go make a demo yet." And he sent her to me, and we worked and we worked, and she did. She got it. She had a great voice. She had great instincts. She's just one of those people, and it does happen every once in a while. And she just had it. She was just. It's kind of exciting to see.
Sometimes you just have to point somebody in the right direction.
Yeah, and they just need to, like, she needed to learn the fundamentals and then expand from there. And then I just taught her tricks and things like that with just acting tricks and things like that. And then as well as different genres of voiceover she can think about. And we worked on sort of perfecting her money voice and things. But hopefully that answers Craig's question. I think if somebody's got the innate talent and then the open-mindedness and willingness to work hard and learn from your coaches, you'll get there.
Yeah. I just, the way he described it, a voice that sucks. And I've heard unique voices, I've heard beautiful voices, I've heard quirky voices, all kinds of, but I've never heard a voice that sucked. I think any voice you have that you can communicate with people, you could possibly, if you have, some acting ability, you could turn that voice into a career. Couple questions here. Nazia, hey Naz.
Oh, Naz.
What are your thoughts on the second take for conversational reads? Do you feel the second take should be a variation upon conversational or completely different? Couple layers to that one too.
Yeah, so I'm guessing when she means the conversational read, she means the real person read. So what I like to hear, and I've coached Naz before. I always tell students I like to hear in a casting situation, especially if it's a conversational real person read. I like to hear all your fun stuff at the first take. I like to hear your ad-libbing, your improv skills, your acting skills, your lead-ins, and everything like that. And then on the second take, I always tell actors, don't vocalize your ad-libs or your improv stuff, but imply it. And then that way the client has both versions, so they can hear you coming to town, doing all your fun stuff. I always say bring in your party tricks. And then if they need a clean take for whatever reason, they've got that in the second take. Because even though you might have a lead in that says, like, you guys, you got to hear this, introducing new tide, so in the second take, you're not going to say that, hey guys, you got to hear this. But by just having that energy, introducing new tide, I'm still implying that I kind of had that going into it. Yeah. So this way the client has both versions and they can hear. But if you don't do anything creative on take one and take two, it's just, I would never pass up my client, especially if it's a real person read, because they need to know you're going to be fun at the session. They need to know you're going to be creative, and make them look good.
That's part of the job, is showing up and entertaining. Hey, let me do a dance for you.
Totally. You have to remember, I always tell students and such that, a lot of these ad agency people are not necessarily directors. They're producers and copywriters and stuff. So they want to hear you do all your fun stuff in the audition so that you're going to make their job easier at the session.
Yeah. And I could almost hear people across the country jotting down, bring my party tricks to the first take.
I know. Be fun. Be a party girl.
I've got another one. Lonnie Manella. Lovely to hear you both. Question, what trends do you see being cast for commercials that say trusted non-announcer? Do sexier sounding chicks get cast more frequently than smilier, more bubbly deliveries?
Okay, wait, so those are two questions, right? So what trends, I guess I should put my glasses on.
What trends do you see being cast for commercials that say trusted non-announcer?
Oh, gosh, almost every commercial. Pretty much, except when Trump first started in an office and they were asking for announcers. pretty much, every commercial, we could all attest to this. They say no announce and they put it in all caps, right? And then you look at the first line and it's introducing. It's but yeah, everything, again, the trend now is, and it still has been this way for a while, is very real, conversational, approachable. We want it to sound like, you and I are driving in the car and I'm telling you about how great, my laundry's turning out with this new type.
Because
really
that's a conversation that we always have every day. Yeah.
I have it all the time. And then what was the thing about the sexier voice girls or something?
Part 2, do sexier sounding chicks, thank God I didn't write this, get cast more frequently than smilier, more bubbly deliveries?
You know what? Smiley bubbly is not as popular right now. So I'd say it's kind of like a cross between you two. A lot of ad people love when women have texture, raspiness to their voice, some sort of quirkiness maybe. I don't get a lot of so much. Well, sometimes I do see the sexy read come up, or the flirty, teasy thing they'll say, cosmetic voice. But it's more about, when they do ask for that, that's usually what they mean, is that sort of raspy Catherine Keener thing, Scarlett Johansson thing.
Yeah.
Bubbly, perky reads are really not that much in style. We sort of call that it's almost like a retail read or a Saturday morning read. It's that super high, elevated, perky thing.
Let's see. Michael Woodley. I'm sure he's somebody else's student too, but one of mine. If you're unfamiliar with an actor, what would you like to hear on the actor's demo for them to really stand out? That is an excellent question.
Good question. Yay. Yeah, Dave and I agree on that one. So I have always said I like to hear the 5 popular directions. And this is what I teach, which I call the foundation of commercials. There are 5 directions that will always get asked for in the commercial world.
Hold on, everybody, get your pens ready.
Yeah,
here we go.
Everybody who knows me knows this is what I teach. And that is the warm and friendly read, the real person read, which we talked about, the wry, dry, snarky, quirky person, the authoritative person, and then the sexy voice, cosmetic read. So as a casting director, I like to hear those 5 directions on your demo. I started producing demos again recently, but just mostly like for students of mine and stuff. And this is exactly what I tell them to do too. And I say, put your real person first, because that's the most popular casting trend right now, is the real person read. However, if you're money voice and you are, like known as the kind of, snarky, wry, smart ass guy or something like that, put that first. Whatever maybe your money voice is, put that first and then have the real person second. But I say at least have those 5 popular directions as the basis of your commercial and, commercial demo. And demos are now, no longer than a minute 15 at the most. And so, if you, like yesterday, I was working with somebody on their demo and she has such a quirky, wacky, fun little voice. We also put this spot where she's like the voice of a little puppy because it was perfect. But don't do dialogue reads. Nobody puts dialogue reads on their demos anymore, and don't do very, cartoony type things or promos. There's so many dedicated demos for each one of these specific genres.
You can have as many as 10 demos.
It's crazy.
It's insane. It's insane.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's something we didn't do back in the day either. Like your commercial demo covered everything. So.
Yeah. And interesting, right after that question, Dave, thanks for the service. Awesome military throwback pick. Oh, my dad today. I'm super excited to have Mary Lynn Wissner on and I have a coaching session with her soon. Quick question on her app. She has the 5 directions. Should you put those 5 directions on your commercial demo to show versatility?
You read my mind, Myron. Yeah. So I have an app out there that has these, I created that several years ago because of the coaching, and actors it was sweet because actors would say, oh my God, I feel so good after coaching. I wish I could take you into the booth with me when I audition. Or I would see them come to, casting sessions, and they'd have like their little, like an index card with their notes. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to put that in an app. So then you have what I teach on the app.
And
And
tell me the name of that app again,
it's
because
called
people want to write it.
The Voiceover Self-Direction app.
The
Um,
Voiceover self-direction app. Did you
yeah.
did you get it right, everybody?
Or you can look up my name. It's $4.99. And then we also added a part on there a couple years ago, like how to self-direct for a character script. So that's
Give me some tips. What would you say to people? How should people self-direct? How can this is one of as a matter of fact, I'm putting together a course right now on self-directing. Um, and since we're all in our home studios, and I don't think this is going to change that much once we come out of COVID.
I don't think.
I've had a home studio for more than 20 years. I like the fact that I don't have to drive to an agent's. I like the fact that I can do a bulk of my work, my auditions here,
Right,
and even more now since we're all semi-locked down. What's your best advice for people to become good at directing themselves?
Get the app. but and again, I'm not really trying to be like self-promoting there, but that I did break it down so
No,
that
no, I brought you on here. Self-promote.
thank you. I always feel guilty about that, I don't know, it's Catholic guilt or something. But I created that because that was when the whole I created it about 7 years ago, when actors were starting to have to do more stuff from home, and then obviously the past year or two it's gotten even more so. But the whole thing is for you to understand the genesis of all commercials comes from these 5 directions. Back when advertising started for TV and radio, basically they, copywriters, account execs and so on, figured out that these 5 directions in one way, shape, or form are what, attract a consumer, elicit a response from a consumer, whatever, to go and buy a product. So depending on the product and, how they want to present that product, 1 or 2 of those directions will be a casting spec for that script. So learn how to do them. That's up to me. That's like the easiest thing to do. And everybody who does it always seems to be quite happy with it. The other thing
find your own personal.
Yeah, I say it's like creating a recipe or a formula. And I teach that too, because I try to streamline it, going back to what we were talking about earlier, because I do understand that a good majority of people that do come into the world of voiceover do not come from an acting background.
Yeah.
So this it's almost like a cheat sheet. And what I say is, okay, here's the warm and friendly read. And then like when I'm coaching somebody, we break it all down. So we come up with like 3 or 4 trigger words for them on, okay, this was what works for Dave, conversational, answering a question, whatever it might be. And then that way, when you go into your booth, maybe you look up at your little Post-it and it says warm and friendly. Oh yeah, that's me doing A, B, and C. Boom, go. And then whatever little enhancements or add-on emotions you want to do, that's up to you. And that's on the app as well. And then the other thing that I think is super important, I always tell actors as far as the self-directing thing goes, is before you submit your audition, listen back to it and ask yourself, do I sound like I'm reading to somebody, or do I sound like I'm talking to them?
Yeah.
Because that is the kiss of death is sounding like you're reading to them. You don't want to sound like you're reading to them. But at the same time, you don't want to sound like you're talking sloppily. Is that a word? Either. So,
well, it is now.
Yeah, sloppily. So I like that. So, yeah, listen back to your audition and ask yourself, does it sound like I'm talking to them? I might be talking to them in an authoritative way.
I usually say, do you believe it? Do you believe the character?
That's good. I love that. Yeah.
And usually I'm talking about video games, but it falls over into commercials and other things as well. We want to be people talking to other people.
Yes.
As opposed to some disembodied voice that is saying things that, you know, why should I believe you? Why? Where's your humanity?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's a good
let's
one. Humanity.
John Simmons, if commercials are plentiful, would you recommend that to be would you recommend that to be the route to going into getting into voiceover? That was a little quirky. Let you could simplify that.
Yeah.
Since commercials are plentiful, would you recommend doing commercials as a start to get into voiceover, just to get your foot in the door and get one step closer to where you want to go? I know that used to be the first thing that people would want to do with a demo. Your
I
thoughts?
agree. I still think it's that way. I think that no matter if all you want to do is video games and animation or something, when you try to get a voiceover agent, the first thing they're going to ask for is your commercial demo. Because, like I said earlier, it's the bread and butter of the voiceover industry. Commercials are cast every single day. Video games, animation, a few times a month. Promos, that's a whole nother kind of group. But narrations, a couple times a month. You know, um, commercials, they want to know you're viable in that area. Now, if you're an exceptional video game and animation actor, and maybe you've got a few credits to your name, they might make an exception there. But one thing I know, and again, promoting me and my company, we host the VO Pros, which is, we call it Meet the Pros, where actors get to come and meet agents, um, great coaches, talent like Dave Fennoy has come a few times, casting directors, and so on from all the different genres. And the one thing that agents consistently always say at our pro nights is, we want to hear your commercial demo. So I say, work on your commercial reads, get your commercial demo done first. Or if you can do both, and you want to do animation or characters, do that as well. Some producers I know give you a discount if you do two at the same time. But don't make a demo, no matter what it is, until you are 100% trained, ready, locked and loaded, and good to go. Because there's nothing worse than a bad demo. And I've heard
Oh,
a billion of those. And it not only breaks my heart because I feel so bad for the actor who spent that money, but it also sometimes makes me angry because there's some producers that maybe, or shouldn't have made a demo for that person.
I have had that happen years ago. I used to do a play every year. It's been a while now,
Oh, I'd love to
but
see you.
but one of the actors I was with, he was an older gentleman, had this just wonderful craggy voice, and I sent him someplace because he wanted to do a demo, and uh, I wasn't doing any demos for people then. And a few weeks later, he came back, and they had clearly just handed him the copy they had on hand.
Oh,
They did not get him. They did not lean into what his talent, his storytelling, just the
that's
wonderfulness. Yeah,
yeah.
and uh, I do demos for video games if I've been working with you for a while because I feel like I really need to know the things that you can do and how far I can stretch you. And uh, but I see people all the time go get a demo, they're not ready, and worse, do it themselves or have a friend. Oh, I've got a friend with a studio. He's got a little studio in his house. I'm going to go over there and do it. And it's not just you can be talented. The reads could be ever so good, but if the mix isn't right, uh, people are going to hear it and reject it because it's not what they expected. There has to be this mix of, wow, this is fresh and new, and it's in the format that I'm used to getting.
Right. I agree. And it has to be, I think that copy needs to be, specifically written for that person, not just, copy that they got from workshops. It's not, I've heard there's a couple scripts that I've used in workshops, for years. And every once in a while I'll hear them on people's demos. I'm like, oh, please. Yeah, there's a lot going into it. Put it this way. Um, it's not as bad as it used to be because the field was much smaller. So a bad demo used to get around, I hate to say that, but like Bob Bergen and I used to always have like, the Christmas party, here's the bad demo time. I mean, it was our joke, and not to be mean, but there was just some people, they recorded the demo in their shower because they thought that the sound was so good, or their bathroom or something like that. And again, like I said, the agents would sometimes send, can you believe this demo I just got? Do you know this person or something like that? So you have to remember, you don't want to embarrass yourself. You don't want to embarrass your potential, because maybe you will be great someday. Just keep working at it. I always say you kind of know when you're ready to make a demo, like the way you knew you were ready to get married, or the way you knew, okay, it's time for a change in a career or something like that. It's just like you are good to go. And then again, if you have good advisors around you, good coaches, or you've taken some great classes and got received great feedback from other
You know,
professionals.
I feel like most people probably feel that way, but I've seen uh, American Idol and those first few weeks when there are people who think they can sing and clearly cannot. And I have heard like you, so many bad demos that and wondered, why did this person think they were ready? Did they not listen to other demos? Did they not listen to what's on the airwaves? Um,
Well, you have to realize too, and this is something, I've kind of alerted other demo producers to, and even the talent is, as a demo producer, your name goes out there with that talent, because
yeah,
I'm telling you, if
yeah,
your demo sucks, or you were not ready to make a demo, anybody you give that demo to is going to ask, who made your demo? Like,
yeah.
what the hell were they thinking? And so it consistently, as a casting director, I will ask a talent that, and I just kind of keep a little running list of ones like, well, consistently this demo company is not up to par.
Sus.
Yeah, I'm trying to be nice. Or this one, wow, they have integrity. It's always original, and things like that. So
And there's some good people in town. There's some people that
absolutely,
I send people to, and I'm not married to any one of them, but there's some people who do it a lot, do it well, and take the time. Little
yeah,
question here, Tommy C. Question: when casting black voices or POC voices, are casting directors looking for a sound that identifies the ethnicity, or is it enough for the VO actor to just be of the ethnicity requested? That is a good question.
that's a good question. I'm going to be super honest with you. I think up until maybe say a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, it was more like a politically correct thing to say we want to cast all ethnicities, because I think that the ad agency or the production company was doing their due diligence. Just like when they would say we open to male or female, and I knew they're going to cast the guy because you just look at this, you just get it. I
Yeah.
knew. But now, and I think, hallelujah, I think it's great. I think because not only with the Me Too movement, but just everything going on in the last couple of years, um, there's so many amazing, beautiful actors of color, and races and things out there, and why can't they do it? Why do we have to be so specific? Um, I can usually hear, when I can sometimes, I'm pretty good at identifying races, but there have been times when I've been like, I wouldn't know if that person was white, black, yellow, green, or whatever, So I think now is a really, really good time for people of color in the voiceover world. And I think if you, on top of that, are obviously just a great actor too, you're going to have some really good opportunities.
I think it's a double edged sword. I think one of the part of his question, are they looking for somebody who sounds, and say in my case, black?
Yeah.
Uh, And I think sometimes that is the case. I think sometimes they do want the listener to know that you are being spoken to by somebody that hopefully you'll relate to on a racial level, or experiential level. Uh, but I also think, as most of us in America, I think, are opening up our minds to who an American is, who we are, that a real American includes every color, just all the people that are here from wherever you're from, whatever color you are. This is what American is. This is the melting pot.
That's
Uh,
what we sound like.
yeah, I think we're seeing now and we're accepting now signature voices for companies from whoever.
Yeah.
Does this person touch your heart? Do they touch your head? Do they connect with you? Do you get the right feeling about this product, regardless of male, female, or whatever color?
And I apologize because I was trying to go that way with his question, and then when you reiterated it, it reminded me what I'm thinking is good now is like I said, a few years ago, they would say to us, make sure, he sounds urban or street. And some black actors would come into the booth and they would say, okay, how urban do you want me, or how this or that, and I'd be like, oh,
Our buddy Jason Lanier White says he does that all the time.
yeah. I remember Phil Lamar used to come in all the time, and I felt sort of self conscious. He's like, oh no, no, don't worry about it. He goes, I know what's out. I know what they want, I totally respected that. And now I think what I was trying to say, where I was leaning towards, is now I don't see them saying we want him to sound street or this or that. They're just like all ethnicities, which is great because,
Yeah,
like you just said, this is America. This is what we are.
you
You
know, it's
know.
old story from back in the day. I'd be on a session and they'd have the white director say, "Can you make it blacker?" And
Yeah.
I kind of knew what they wanted, but I finally I started saying, "I don't know what you mean." And he says, "Well, you know, blacker, more." And I said, "Well, would you ever ask a white actor to make it whiter?" We are not a monolithic people,
Right.
or
Oh my
that
God.
you want somebody grew up on the Delta picking cotton and never got to go to school? Do you want a rapper from New York? Do you want a college professor from Chicago? Who are you looking for? Give me
Right.
more of an idea of the character you're looking for. And I wasn't doing it out of anger, well, a little bit of anger, but I didn't do it angrily. I really felt like I'm helping you become a better director.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important. People should know. Speaking of how diverse Dave is, I just remembered before we got on, I cast you in something. It's probably been about a year or two now, where you were. I needed the voice of a really beautiful, deep announcer, a very stoic kind of man to be a baby. Do you remember? It was for
Yes.
Children's Hospital. And I'm like, I know the perfect guy, and I'm bringing him in. And he gets it. And I
I
was
remember
like,
that was a fun gig. That was a
yeah,
fun
and you
gig.
had a white mom and a white dad in the
Yeah,
commercial. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I remember that. Well, you know
it was
what? We are. I promised you an hour. It's 7:03.
oh my gosh, we're having too much fun.
Too much fun. You got a couple more minutes?
Yeah, yeah, I'm good. I'm
Uh,
loving this.
let's see. And he's asked so many questions here that I did not get to, so I'm going to bring him. Jim, how you doing? As a Nigerian talent, I know I've wowed Dave before. I couldn't believe it. He obviously heard something. It all comes down to your T for talent. And Jimmy, that is so true. And once again, talking about the American voice, one might not listen to your voice and go, "Oh, that's an American voice," but we hear English voices, we hear Indian voices, we hear Latin voices, because this is the smelting pot. And I think most of us have broadened our horizons on what we are able to hear, take in, and connect to.
I think a memorable voice is a memorable voice, no
Yeah.
matter where you come from. And ultimately, that's what an ad agency wants for their product. Because if the consumer remembers, God, remember that guy that had that voice? It was for Cadillac and yada yada yada. Then it's you identified with something.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
listen, I'm going to let you go. And partially it's selfish because I got dinner waiting upstairs.
Oh
But
darn.
Mary Lynn, this has been just a pleasure.
Oh, thanks.
And to thank you for the years that I've known you and the number of times you've brought me in to be, an evening with the pros. And you've always been that very kind, understated, giving person to the voiceover community. I celebrate you.
Aw, thank you. That's so sweet. Well, I'm honored and I really appreciate those kind words and I feel the same about you. You've always been a cool guy and just yeah, just fun and just an incredible talent too on top of that. And I really do appreciate you having me on tonight. It was a lot
Well,
of fun. Do it
that's
again
because I
sometime.
appreciate it. Well,
All
I will let you go,
right.
and let's see. Let me get back to this and say goodbye to everybody. I hope you, the listening, watching audience, appreciate what you got this evening. Mary Lynn is one of our best in this business as a casting director and as a coach. So this is what we want to do next week. Celia Siegel will be talking about promoting your business, branding your business, and how to keep getting more business. And until then, hey, do some great auditions and book something, and I'll see you next week.